Hi, everyone, and welcome to the OPSWAT webinar about proven deployments for the manufacturing sector. I'm Itai Glick, VP of Products, focusing on peripheral media protection and removable media and peripheral devices. And joining me today is Stephen Broadwell. Stephen, do you want to shortly introduce yourself?
Yeah, as it says on the screen, I'm Steve Broadwell. I'm the lead solutions engineer here at OPSWAT, focusing on everything.
Short introduction here about OPSWAT. OPSWAT protects the world's critical infrastructure. We have been here for the last 20 years, and our mission is been to protect critical infrastructure. We specialize in securing both OT and IT environments from email security to PLC security. And today we are focusing specifically on the manufacturing sector. We have a fully packed agenda, and we try to make it really interesting for you. We are talking about the latest cyber attacks in the industry, myths versus reality, that we have common challenges for manufacturing and OT organizations, peripheral media protection solutions to come and help organizations to protect themselves, and best practices in real world proven deployments examples and architectures that will be led by Stephen. So let's jump into it immediately. I want to share some recent examples of attacks that have been on the manufacturing sector over the last few months. We've seen many examples of unauthorized third party accessing organization, manufacturers, and leading to personal data going out, production halt at various locations, and PII being stolen from the organization, exposing the organization to litigation. What we see is actually that today's security, when it's not purposely built, cannot keep up with the attackers. The detection of malwares is relatively low. The industrial firms experience a lot of malware from removable media. 37% of the industrial firms actually experience that. And eventually, we see that the hackers know how to aim toward the ICS, toward the industrial control systems, and 81% of the attack are actually targeting those components and objects in the network, trying to hurt the organization, to halt production, to create damage or whatever they want. Eventually, file-borne threats cost manufacturing sector over $90 billion annually worldwide across the industry. So this is a threat that eventually costs a lot of money for organization, and we are here to show how proven deployments can help you reduce this risk. We've seen an increase in ransomware attacks on the manufacturer in 50% over the last 6 months. So if you thought you were under attack, you're definitely under attack. And they're aiming for hitting the OT system, making changes to the OT system so they would be able to ransomware you where it hurts. In parallel to that, you have regulation. Now, regulation are a good thing. They make sure that our industry is protected. They make sure that the right protection is put in place for organization in different industries, and eventually to enforce that. And maybe sometimes, unfortunately, there are fines, and there are many different regulations depending on your location, depending on your exact industry, and what your organization is doing. I won't cover all of them, but what we are saying, for example, for the in electric reliability critical infrastructure protection, which is called an ERCSIP, we see that they demand removable media protection, and many of the others also are demanding that. They also demand backup, they also demand process and procedures, but we'll be focusing on what technology could be applied to your organization to support being in compliant to those regulations. Just a few anecdotes that eventually undermine your frontline defense, and thinking that OT and IT should be handled the same way. I give one example that could jump and make sense. Imagine you have an antivirus on your machine, and while he's really eager to do his job, is actually utilizing the full amount of the CPU that you have, 100% CPU. What happens to that critical device that is connected to that device? It shuts down actually, because all the CPU is devoted to doing malware scan on the device, which is great, but it's great for IT. It doesn't work well in the OT industry. OT security definitely should be a board level issue. If your factory is down because a security incident in your OT, it's something they need to know about. And finally, while air gaps are extremely, extremely important in organization to protect it, it's not enough, because as soon as you put an air gap, you have a USB problem coming on the other side, because data always needs to flow from side to side. And we are here to show you how this could be achieved in your organization.
Okay, right then. Common challenges. And there's certainly a few listed on there. But rather than going through each one by one, let's take a step back. When it comes to manufacturing, and well, let's be honest, OT in general, resiliency is very important. It's our dependency on data and all this digital infrastructure that means that even a small disruption can have a significant impact on operations, safety, customer relationships, and, well, brand reputation. And these disruptions in OT may, as we all know, have a much more negative effect than those in IT. We're talking actual physical consequences. We've got shutdowns, outages, leaks, even explosions. Hence why cybersecurity and risk management is at the forefront of many of our conversations today. And the need, as Ite mentioned earlier, for regulations, frameworks, standards, and best practices. Because even with these, organizations still need to be moving the needle forward with digitization, Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, the electrification of everything. And of course, I don't think I've even gone through a single day without hearing or reading something about the convergence of IT and OT. To be fair, there's several very good reasons for all of this data requirements. I mean, it can lead to efficiency, availability, automation, and much better decision making. But that's why I'm coming to the challenges. And there's always a but, or however, the more integrations, the more devices, the more data that is flowing and exchanging brings with it other issues. There's now a much larger and complex attack surface to defend. Bear in mind, these are also OT systems. They need to be up 100% of the time. And there's still lots and lots of legacy hardware and legacy software out there with life cycles of 20 plus years. And many of them are slow. They've got resource constraints. Others are not networked. And yet still, they need access to these system and productivity files. And there's further complications when we start talking with vendors and manufacturers, where they'll only certify certain products on certain patches, on certain systems. So how can you introduce controls? How can you help secure the devices? Or better still, secure the data as it comes in and out of your environment, no matter how it's coming in and out? So let's find out, shall we? How many people on this call may have already spoken to me or many of my colleagues and discussed all of the possible, and maybe even gone through a day in the life of a file? But that's not what we're here to focus on today. It's not what we're here to talk about. Today, we're going to go through some actual real world deployments within, obviously, the manufacturing sector. Wow. This, I mean, is a very, very, very busy slide. But don't worry, I'm not going to sit here and start talking about what's good and bad about the Purdue model. It is very useful, and I like it because it's a nice representation of where our solutions sit. One thing to really highlight about this is how deep and how good our solutions are in OT. Every single blue icon you see there represents a solution within our platform. When you compare that to a lot of niche OT security vendors out there that say they secure IT, and yet maybe they only do a small subset or just one function, to be honest, it's quite telling. And again, don't worry, we're not going to go and sit here and throw all of these solutions at you one by one. I mean, today we're just going to see, we're not going to see what sticks. We're just going to see a subset. As this is for real world examples, we'll focus on a small subset: the kiosk, the sheep dip, USB scanning, validation, diodes, managed file transfer. As Ite says, we don't have much time, but we'll try and squeeze in what we can. Generally, there's going to be something that addresses your need and really hits the nail on the head. Okay.
So we're going to cover those solutions. We'll give a short brief of the solution, and then we'll show how it works in real life. We'll do that exercise a few times to cover a few different solutions to give you a 360 degrees view of what we can actually achieve for your organization. Sometimes people ask me, don't your products sometimes overlap? And the answer is yes. Sometimes they do overlap because sometimes each customer is looking for a different solution for the same problem. So let's start with our kiosk. This is, in fact, a dedicated and isolated scanning device. The goal of this kiosk is to secure and enable the use of removable media devices for all users entering a site. And those could be employees, those could be guests, third parties coming with their own removable media to introduce to your secure zone or to your critical endpoints and assets. So let's see how customers are enjoying this solution. One of the advantages of our kiosk, and specifically the you shall not pass, or what we call the kiosk tower, is the fact that you can create a culture of cybersecurity around this kiosk. You can um, you can design and create your own team for the kiosk, whether it's for the outside and also for the application, very customized to your organization, representing the brand of the cybersecurity division and the brand of the company together into a single location. When guests come into the organization, if this one is placed in a lobby and this is a secure device, it creates an impact and another means of trust for the organization. So we have seen a leading automaker strengthening their production with OPSWAT Meta Defender Kiosk. They wanted something really fast, very high performance, because speed has been a game changer for us. And it's funny when you say it because in cars, speed is always a game changer. The kiosk sends the media swiftly, allowing us to secure our production assets without compromising on time. So when you think about security, it always should be enabling users to work as they need to work while retaining security. So this is one example. For the sake of time, we added another organization directly into the same use case, but they are focused a little bit different. They wanted, so this is a very big pharma industry, and they again use the Meta Defender Kiosk. They wanted to protect the sensitive data, like pharmaceutical recipes and production files. And with the OPSWAT Meta Defender Kiosk, they wanted to know every file entering the environment is sanitized and secure. They didn't want any risk coming into their environment to maintain their operation. Let's see how it's done, Stephen.
So here we go, the use cases. I mean, the previous two customers, I find them very interesting. And to be honest, we have many, as Ite mentioned, with this exact same use case, the sheep dip. The many files that are needed in their secure and isolated environments. And they have them on CDs, USB drives, SD cards, even floppy disks. And many of the files in question represent a supply chain risk. These isolated devices still require updating, patching, backing up, config and recipe files, need them downloading, and yet they still need to ensure these files are free of malware. Just because it's a file from a known vendor, why should you blindly trust the content? It is what it says it is. And as Ite previously mentioned, although threat protection, security is a driving factor, this is still OT, and availability, operational efficiency, and uptime is just as important. Therefore, being able to scan multiple files, many levels deep, with a full layered protection, including multiple AVs simultaneously, speed is a must. And one of the customers in question, previously Their old solution had one AV, it was slow, they were never truly confident it was catching all of their threats. And in this case, no news is definitely not good news. Hence why the sheer power and performance of the OPSWAT kiosk came, well, simply as a breath of fresh air.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's go to another example from pharmaceutical manufacturing in UK. They needed to better secure peripheral media and also implement scan validation. For their operational integrity, data flow to critical environments needs to be secured. So for them, it wasn't only enough that it is scanned in the entrance, it was also extremely and just the same important that it would be validated before it enters the exact endpoint. They had a solution which ranged for 200 kiosks around the world with more than 10,000 endpoints protected. Sometimes when considering our solution, you can consider it as an endpoint security solution. But we are protecting the organization before the files gets into the endpoint. Let's see how it says, Chief Stephen, and maybe if you can shed some more light on this deal, because I know you were very involved with this one.
Yeah, and just to reiterate again, this deployment is an extension of the previous sheep dip we just discussed. But this customer wanted assurance. They needed validation that the files or the content of the media, the USBs, hadn't changed since it had been scanned. It's all good that you scan the media in the kiosk. It goes through all of that great and powerful threat detection previously mentioned. But then what? You simply trust that the users do not make a change to a file or add another couple of files on the USB as they're walking across the air gap. I mean, they finally get there. And it's a long way to that kiosk over there now. No one will know. I'll just add a couple of files, right? What's the harm? Really? And that's exactly where the validation application comes in. It's running on their latest Windows operating systems and obviously most of their legacy ones. It's lightweight, standalone. It's designed, to be honest, to be set and forget. The customer has it installed on their HMIs, their engineering PCs, their POR devices. And what it does is it ensures that the file can't be accessed, can't be opened, can't be executed, or even copied from the portable media, the USB or SD card, unless it's been scanned by the kiosk. And any files that have been changed after the fact, they're fine. Change them, add files, do whatever you want, but you're not going to be able to open them or do anything with them until they've been scanned or rescanned. It's that simple. It's also got bad USB protection built in. It helps against things like rubber ducky, bash bunny attacks, which, they do get past many of today's USB lockdown policies. And for those devices that customers, because we are talking OT, simply can't install anything on them, they're too old, they're too slow, or they're simply not allowed, then they are using our hardware version of the agent. Pretty much, it looks like an Apple TV, but think of it more of a secure USB hub, a protective bubble, if you like, around these devices. There's always a solution.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move to another example. Unified device monitoring in smart manufacturing with my OPSWAT central management. This customer wanted a scalable architecture to handle the entire device. And when we mention your device, we're talking about removing media without performance degradation, and of course, 24/7 operation.
So this customer, like many others, needed to manage these critical devices centrally. And just looking at that slide now, I'll get more into that in a second. But the eagle-eyed amongst you are probably looking at that slide and wondering, why is the validation agent on there? Especially when I said a couple of slides back that it's not centrally managed, it's standalone. Why is it there? And there's one very important feature that Central Manager is used for, which is challenge and response. If you need to break glass for a few minutes on the agent or whitelist some media, then the Central Manager will provide that specific functionality, allows that response. Oh, here we go. The central manager itself. And this does, for this customer, exactly what you expect it to do. They want visibility into what the kiosks have been doing, their utilization, what users are scanning, what and where, what threats have been found and why, dashboards, tables, exportable lists, sessions, scans, etc., etc. And that's what it provides. But they're also using it for management. They're pushing policies and configuration changes centrally, as well as controlling security updates, signature updates, engine updates, and appliance updates. Now that's interesting. Having the ability to tell the kiosks to pull down the latest image, the latest firmware, the latest drivers, patches on premise, obviously in the background so as not to interfere with any of the network traffic. That's powerful. Or even better, the ability to centrally roll back an image at any point to a last known good state, pretty much giving you that central self-healing kiosk. How powerful is that? Just saying.
Yeah, and remember, this is a platform. This is not only for a kiosk. This gives you central visibility for the endpoints, for the drive, for all of our technologies within the same platform, according to your use cases. Let's go to another big manufacturer, an automotive manufacturer, and they wanted protection from file-borne threats. When this global automotive manufacturer required an integrated solution to secure file scanning, transfer, and visitor management across its operation, the kiosk and the MFT, the managed file transfer, were deployed. In our kiosk, we don't only have capability to scan removal media, we also have a unique capability to perform guest management, to control who gets into your organization.
It is right. And now this customer, again, is interesting, which I realize now I've been pretty much saying that about every customer so far, but my mic, my show. They wanted to go beyond the sheep dip and empower the kiosks to automatically copy the clean files to an MFT, a managed file transfer server on the low side, so their IT. A secure vault, if you like, on the network. But what's great about this is the fact that the MFT is rescanning the files periodically, because just because it wasn't a bad file 4 hours ago, maybe it's a bad file now. It happens. And it also has release control. But if anyone in the IT network can access these files before they can, these files need approval. It doesn't stop there. The files are then automatically transferred across the boundary to OT, where they can be accessed by their OT engineers and their POR devices, knowing they've been scanned and had supervisor approval as it been passing the boundary or the boundaries. It could be a one-to-many, it could be a train. It's great having this, I guess, this nice and complete way of orchestrating the secure file movements into OT, that easy, simple integration.
Also worth mentioning that you can decide to expose one MFT directly to the internet. And within the double layer security here, you can actually enjoy people uploading files to you remotely before they come and visit to make sure they're clean. And then when they come to visit and support your organization, they pick it up from the OT managed file transfer solution after they have been scanned and introducing them directly to the network, reducing the time of their visit in your organization, reducing the cost. Let's introduce another product that we have. We have a product that is meant to provide data security or network security using a combination with what's called an optical data diode for OT. The mean to push data from one side of the network to the other, while physically preventing data going the other way around, is the key for this product, our Meta Defender network. We support speeds up to 10 gigabit per second. We support different OT protocols and IT protocols, but specifically OT protocols like Modbus you would find here. And we support with that separation compliance requirements. Now, what we see, and this is according to a survey by SANS, that in 57% of the attack, a compromise in the IT allowed the threats into the OT and IT network. Now, most of the threats would need communication back to the operator. Putting a segregation on that is critical to provide a higher security level for the organization. Let's see it in use. So, of course, the idea is to prevent cross-domain threats, meaning domains attacks, IT and OT involvement for a Vietnamese manufacturer. OPSWAT solution not only protect the critical assets of business, but they also provide the necessary tools and information to improve the cybersecurity strategy of the organization. Let's see how it's done.
So this customer, who may or may not be interesting, had a very flat network, and they were looking to implement segmentation. Specifically, they wanted to create a physical one-way air gap around certain critical solutions. Bottom line, you can't get more secure, more set and forget than a data diode. If you need to protect a system in your safety zone, use a diode, end of. And this is what they're doing within this customer. It is as simple as that. On a slightly different note, I'm talking to several customers in manufacturing today that have jump server sprawl. These ISVs have come in with their isolated systems, networks, and now what they want to do is automatically transfer files to your network. And so you're not going to allow them, obviously. So what you do is instead put in a jump server. And that jump server needs to be on Windows, it needs to be in the domain, it needs GPOs, it needs EDI, it needs patching, upgrading, monitoring. And before you know it, you've got many of these scattered around. And all they're there to do is simply copy a file from one system or one network to another. Well, why not simply put in a tiny diode in there? File copy is built-in function of a diode. They literally have software installed to transfer files from an SMB share or an SFTP server to the other side securely. Set and forget. Again, it's a no-brainer.
I want to emphasize two important things that could be additionally done with this product. One is you can decide which direction you want. For example, telemetry, you would want it from the OT toward the IT or toward the cloud. While not exposing other threats in, you can use the network to provide that mean of communication for telemetry for your organization. And the other important thing is part of the product could also scan the files before they are led in to the organization. This would be our transfer guard network. So we actually implement our scanning technology directly inside the data diode. So only safe file would get transferred to your secured network. Let's touch another important product that we have to support similar use cases. We touched it a little bit earlier when we talked about endpoint validation. But in this use case, we'll be talking how it can protect an endpoint from a threat by a peripheral media device, or downloads from the internet, or from instant messaging application or your device, and block them before they are available for the user, preventing access until they are scanned. And this could be for USB devices and could be for other artifacts that you download from the internet.
Yeah. I just to again reiterate, the customer needed protection on the endpoint. We mentioned in previous slides the validation agent. Well, this is the validation agent on steroids. It can be centrally managed, but not only does it validate the files on the media, if any of those are changed or new ones, it can then automatically send them to be scanned with the same layered protection technology that we mentioned in the kiosk that we're famous for. So now when they get the results back, they can access those files too. It's that simple. Maybe if you're too lazy to walk to the kiosk after the fact, then it's a solution for you. But that's just a drop in the ocean of what this modular agent does for this customer. It can do multi-scanning, multiple AVs, compliance checks, vulnerability management, patch management, including offline patching. And the list goes on and on and on and on.
I just want to emphasize a little bit about the air gap functionality. This client is meant to be run on air gap networks. We know that you need to secure your endpoints in the OT side, and the OT side usually would be out of your out of the internet. So this is a purposely built solution endpoint for OT organization. Now, the scanning is not done on the device. The scanning is done centralized in your organization. Now, this in fact protects your endpoint from being overutilized by the endpoint itself, making it really usable for A, legacy devices, and B, where you don't want to interfere with the regular operation of the device. And it requires less updates because of it, because the entire updates are only done to the centralized Meta Defender core that supports this operation of the endpoint. Now, we talked about USB. We talked about files coming in from the network. But what if this third party supplier or technician comes with a laptop and tells you, hey, I would like to connect this laptop to this machine to perform maintenance? Do you trust the antivirus that is implemented on his device? The answer for that is no, we do not trust. So OPSWAT has developed a unique solution to perform comprehensive scan on transient cyber assets and critical devices for supply chain security going behind the OS. We incorporate industry-leading technology like our Metascan multi-scanning with 7 different anti-malware engines. We can integrate proactive DLP to see if private information is introduced to the organization. We detect if there are applications that contain vulnerability and prevent them again from being introduced. And finally, if there are artifacts that we can identify coming from specific countries that your organization is not happy with, we can detect them and block them too. Steven?
Yeah. So this is our last content slide, and another busy one, I hear you say, but it's there to simply highlight our pedigree. There is a reason why many of the world's critical infrastructure is protected by OPSWAT. And as the slide points out, if you look just down there at the bottom, many or most of the top tier security vendors use OPSWAT. Now that's not a bad endorsement if you ask me. And in this limited time, we've highlighted just a few use cases where customers are solving real world problems with our solutions, but there's many, many more. And if you want further information, you have concerns around visibility, zero trust, trust no network, trust no device, trust no file, and yet need to keep it simple, then reach out. I mean, I can guarantee my colleagues, myself, Ite, would love to get in touch and drill down further into your requirements. Anything you'd like to finish with, Ite?
Yeah, I would just take this opportunity to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you have any further questions, comments, suggestions, or challenges that you want our assistance, just reach out. You have the QR code here, and you'll have all the details also in the collateral later. So again, thank you for joining. Stephen, thank you for co-hosting this session with me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Questions?